This is MJ. I'm an author, I'm an artist, I'm an analyzer. Find all my work at mjmunoz.com. Prepare yourself for some off-the-cuff book talk as I tackle another middle grade book chapter by chapter. So, Chapter 4 of The Secret Garden, which is called Martha, is an interesting one. Some people could argue that it's too long. I believe it's about 30 minutes long, maybe 24, something like that, but it feels like it's probably 30 minutes long, and the other chapters were much shorter, so that's kind of interesting. I don't know if the pacing should have been different or not, but it's interesting. We get right away a very strong bit of conflict between Martha and Mary Lennox, and Martha is a simple, rustic, rude housemaid who is one of like 11 kids, I think. She's got a Yorkshire accent. She's very Yorkshire and again crude. She keeps using thou, which surprises me. I don't know if Yorkshire people at that time would have been using thou, or thou, I should say, or if she was trying to be fancy and sound more sophisticated to Mary Lennox and she just didn't know. But I find that interesting that she's doing that. So there's a lot of there's 12 of us and my father only gets 16 cents a week, and I can tell you my mother's put to it to get porridge for 'em all. They tumble about on the moor and play there all day, and mother says the air the more fattens 'em. She says she believes they eat the grass same as the wild ponies do. Our Dickon, he's 12 years old, and he's got a young pony he calls his own. Anyway, where did you get it? Asked Mary. So, Mary speaks this very proper English with her accent that she would have absorbed from her parents, whereas, Martha speaks this, not proper English, this Yorkshire English that she absorbed, I'm sure, from her parents. And that's kind of interesting. It's another bit of class distinction between them. And they very quickly get into this conflict over the fact that Mary is either so upper class or so British, or rather so Indian, that she's not English enough for Martha. And then we actually get into this fascinating exchange of racism between the two of them, where Martha was all excited because she heard this child was coming from India, and so she thought they would be Indian. I think she says black, or she either says black or dark, and it's just, ignorantly, people from India have very dark pigmentation. Some of them have, it's a definitely a different quality from, a black person, but it's, it's a very, very dark skin color. And I could see a simple Yorkshire girl who, can't even speak proper English, even though she's from, England, having that perspective. But what's even more surprising is that we learn that Mary, I think she says they're not people, they're servants. And it's shockingly racist that she feels that way. But she's a callow child. She's a child who never received love and proper instruction and ethics from her parents. I'm assuming if her mother was just kind of a party lady who enjoyed being, wealthy and going to parties and stuff, and her father was busy with army duties, that they probably weren't the most religious people. They probably didn't, spend a lot of time improving her character or helping her to be a better person or instructing her in, what's right and what's wrong at all. That's very likely. So we shouldn't be surprised at this, racism in her. We shouldn't be surprised at this almost subhuman perspective she has on Indians. And the fact that she calls them, just servants is really, sad. And it's really interesting. And it really marks her as probably one of the worst, like morally one of the worst characters. No, not morally. Having that kind of perspective because of ignorance and being stupid, or I guess ill-informed and misinformed because you were not raised properly, doesn't make you morally reprehensible. It makes you sad and ignorant and somebody who's in need of being taught. Anyway, it was a shocking revelation. It was a shocking thing to experience, and yeah, I don't know where to go from there. Uh, they have this whole struggle over the fact that Mary's Aya would always dress her, and Martha says she can't. And it's funny, she talks about her mother thinking that rich children or children of rich people who are pampered and dressed and fed well and given all these things, like you would think they would turn out to be nicer people, but it turns out that taking care of everybody's needs for them and kind of expecting nothing from them back, and there being no reciprocity, interestingly enough, that turns out to make them not not to be the most wonderful people. And Martha reflects on the fact that Mary's in that situation, and look at her, and especially because not only is she, incredibly racist, which Martha is to some extent too, because of that was of the times, that kind of attitude, but she also treats Martha horribly. She treats her as subhuman as she treated the Indians, because they're beneath her, they're servants, they're um, just people who are there for her, and that's her perspective, which is of course wrong. These are still people, regardless of what class they're in or what job they have. You should still treat them with dignity and respect, and she just doesn't know that that's the case. But she gets some pushback, and she throws a huge tantrum, and finally Martha does concede to dress her if she'll do something or other. I can't remember what it was. And then she tells her, "Hey, kid, you got to go outside. You got to go on the moor and play and do whatever." And then she starts, because she knows, or Martha says something about this garden. I can't remember if Miss Medlock said something to the, or Mrs. Medlock said something to her about the garden or not, but Martha definitely mentioned something, and she hears about this one more locked door. So there's this room with 100 houses that's shut up and locked, and then there's this garden even that's shut up and locked, and it blows her mind, this idea that a garden would ever be locked, and that it's something that somebody, because you can just walk into a garden. So anyway, she gets onto the grounds eventually, and she starts playing by herself, and she hears about Dickon and how Martha's other siblings play out on the moor and do whatever, and how Dickon's like tamed this pony, which I mentioned as I read horribly, trying to do the the accent, not the Cockney. I always want to say Cockney accent, but it's Yorkshire accent. Anyway, so she does that, and eventually she plays. She meets this groundskeeper. And this Robin, which she's never encountered a Robin because she grew up in India. That's all she knows is the life in India. And she ends up asking maybe somebody at the kitchen or something about, oh no, she asks him, like, oh, I'm looking for this thing. And he's like, well, why should there be a locked door and whatever. And anyway, the Robin does seem to be going into the secret garden. And she kind of has this little relationship develop. And she likes the idea of Dickon. This is like disparate stuff, but it's all connected. She likes this idea of Dickon being a kid around her age and having this connection with all the animals, with the pony specifically. And he seems like a real nice guy. And I kind of feel like the groundskeeper might be Dickon and Martha's grandfather, but I don't remember if that's true or not. But he, it's interesting. He says to Martha that she's like him. She's ugly and disagreeable, and nobody likes her or him, and they're gonna have no friends. But his only friend is this Robin, so maybe he's not their grandfather. I don't know. I wouldn't think he'd say that if you were married and whatever. Although maybe he's a crotchety old man and his wife doesn't like him, or his dad, or something like that. Anyway, and Martha never really thought much of her looks. She thought her mother was beautiful, but she never thought much of her own looks. And she is learning that her personality is disagreeable. And it's interesting because she's getting these shocks that are going to help transform her character. And also she's getting this motivation to find out, what the secret of the secret garden is, or to find the secret garden itself. And she is enchanted by nature. She's enchanted by these animals, specifically the Robin, and the idea of the pony, and the idea that a child could befriend an animal and have this relationship with them, especially because the old man says this bird is his friend. So not only a child, but also an old man, that anybody could befriend and have this connection with these animals. It's really inspiring to her. It's it's changing the way she's thinking about the world. Martha's helping her to see beyond the class distinction and see that people are people, and that they deserve respect and care. and to be treated differently than she's thought. So it's like her whole worldview is shifting based on these interactions with these, humble people. And she knows that she has to do something else in order to survive there. Not like she's under threat, but just in order to be there and be not miserable, she has to do something else, and she has to be something else. And I think that's really interesting. And I do find it compelling. So I'm looking forward to the next chapter. I kind of hope it's not as long, because this one was long, but it was really interesting. So hopefully you liked it too, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on the chapter and on the book so far, because I really do like it. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting character study and analysis of Mary, and I wonder. I mean, I know from the movie, that I saw years ago. Last time I saw it, she turns out to be a much better kid, and Dickon plays a role in that, and also her cousin, who's Craven's son, and I don't know what that'll be like, because she's a sickly child. Well, anyway, so we'll get into that. We'll get into it in the next chapter. So, but anyway, I'm looking forward to reading it and to continuing this book, because it's really been enjoyable. So again, I'd like to hear your thoughts, what you think about it so far, how you think Mary is handled, how you think this racism is handled, how you think this classism is handled, and how you think the whole story is shaping out so far.
I hope you enjoyed that. Please remember to like, share, subscribe. I invite you to comment, ask questions, and share your thoughts with me. It's always more fun when you're part of the conversation. Until next time, keep reading, be well, and do good things. Visit mjmunoz.com for more of my work and help me build up the Fortress Fiction.